Hello everyone and welcome to this session. My name is Fawad Alavi. I'm a senior software developer and I'm working in the Amsterdam area. In this video, I'm going to explain unit testing and the test-driven development. It is one of the videos that I'm going to record from the series of Test Foundation. At the beginning, I'm going to explain some concepts about testing and different types of testing. And after that, we will try to write some unit tests and see how TDD works. Okay, let's start with the basics. The first thing that you need to know is the test pyramid. What is the test pyramid? Test pyramid is something that you need to always have in mind about the different types of tests in the software development. The first thing that I have here, and it starts from bottom. The first thing that I have at the bottom of this pyramid, I know it's a rectangle, it's not a 3D shape. By the way, is a static analysis. Static analysis is not really a part of the testing. And you really need to be careful about them. The warnings that your IDE here, for example, in my case, Visual Studio gives me. The warning that your static code analysis gives you, like SonarQube and Fortify. If you are working in a company, you should have one of these or some of these static analysis tools for the code quality or security. You need to be careful about them. The first test that we see at the bottom of this pyramid is unit testing. Unit testing is just testing the functionality of a unit of code. After that, we have integration testing. Integration testing is just to check if different modules that we create in our applications can work together correctly or not. After that, we have functional acceptance testing. This level can be called, for example, system testing and so many other things. The terminology here for this level is not really 100% concrete. You can call it whatever you want. Here we are going to verify if the software meets the business requirements or not. After that, we have end-to-end testing, which checks if the software acts nicely with the neighboring applications. And at the top of the pyramid, we have UAT or user acceptance testing, which performed by the end user to accept the software before moving to production. Okay, let's see. At the bottom of the pyramid, what we are checking? We are checking, are we building the things right? We are more focused on functionality. But when we climb this pyramid, we are trying to check the business. We are checking, are we building the right things? And the size and the volume suggest the amounts of tests. For example, if we have 2000 unit tests, it is normal to have 600 integration tests. We can have 300 functional acceptance tests. We can have 100 end-to-end tests and 10 user acceptance tests. The numbers are just some suggestion. I'm just going to tell you that you shouldn't have more integration tests than unit tests. Okay, let me see how this test pyramid is fitted in your pipeline. First of all, IDE. IDE is not a part of your pipeline. CI pipeline. CI pipeline is the first pipeline that you might have in your company. Static analyses are a part of IDE and CI. After that, unit testing. You need to write unit tests. After that, test them before pushing your code to the source control. And in your CI pipeline, you need to run unit tests before building your code and publishing your code, just to be sure that your code is correct. And then we have integration testing. Integration testing is a part of CI. Then we have CD. In the CD, we have functional acceptance testing. At the end of CD pipeline, we mostly deploy the code on the acceptance environment. In this user acceptance environment, you run the end-to-end testing and user acceptance testing. And after that, when all the tests are green, you can push your code to production. What the hell is a unit test? We talked about unit test a lot here. Unit testing is a software development process in which the smallest testable part of an application, which we are going to call it a unit, is tested individually and independently to check if it is performing the operation correctly or not. Okay, but as a developer with 15 years of experience, I really don't know what is the smallest testable part of an application and how to write it, for example. I have seen some methods with 500 lines of code. Yeah, stupid, I know, but in reality we will face this kind of codes. Then how to write a code, a method in a way that it is small enough? Okay, first of all, everything starts with user story. You need to have a good user story. You are developers. You should develop what your product owner asks you. And do not forget, as a developer, you have right to ask questions. Product owners are earning a 6-digit salary just to write user stories. In the refinement session, in the planning session, ask all the questions that you want. They have to make it as clear as possible. And it should not be verbally, it should be written somewhere in the user story, because user story will stay somewhere, will be persisted, for example, on Jira. I'm not sure if you are using Azure, in Azure boards, somewhere that you can read it again after a year and be sure that you implemented something which is correct and based on business requirements. After that, follow solid principles. Solid principles are the foundation of software development. If you don't follow them, you cannot have a good code, testable code, a smallest possible part of code, single of responsibility, Liskov, open close, dependency inversion, and interface segregations. I'm not sure why I didn't name them in order, in the correct order, but you need to follow these principles and they will help you to have a testable code. Clean code principles. You might say, okay, if I start writing code without thinking about the clean code, it is faster. Yeah, I agree. But after a while, when you have more than 10 classes and you want to change something, you want to add a functionality, you want to edit a functionality that you have, touching the code which is not written based on the clean code principles will be a nightmare. Yeah, at the beginning it might be a bit time taking, but I highly recommend you to follow the clean code principles. Okay, you might say we know solid, we know clean code, but when we start writing the code, it ends up a messy code. And how can we test it? Because we might end up writing a method with 100 lines of code. Here there is a practice which is called TDD. If you follow TDD, you can be somehow confident that at the end of the practice, you will have a small methods that you can test. But what is TDD? TDD, sometimes we call it test-driven development, sometimes we call it test-driven design. I personally call it test-driven development because it is a way of development. It is a way of implementing software that you have a cycle of writing unit test, writing the code, and after that refactor the code. And it starts from writing unit test. First write unit test. After that write code. After that check for refactor. If there is anything to refactor, refactor it. One of the best approaches for writing code based on TDD is following the red-green refactor principle or steps. In the red step, you write a unit test. A unit test is based on your user story. You need to read the user story carefully. After that, pick a part, a small part, for example, a point, and write a unit test for that. And let it fail. Let it to be red when you run the unit test. It is what we want. After that, it is time to make the red unit test green. It is time to develop the code. the original code. Implement it and make this unit test green. Now it is time to clean up your mess. Because when you are writing the code, when you are writing a unit test, you shouldn't think about design patterns. You shouldn't think about anything. Just think about how can I write it as small as possible. And in the refactoring phase and step, it is time to clean up your mess. If there is something to refactor, refactor it. If there is not, good for you. Now it is time to write another unit test. Okay, this is the original red-green refactor, but I personally like to add something to it. For the first iteration, it is fine, but in the second iteration, when you want to start from red, writing a unit test, you should read the user story again and again, because when you are writing a unit test, in your mind, you are testing and thinking about the functionality and the corner cases. If you found something that is not in the user story, you have to involve the PO, explain it to PO, ask him or her to add it to the user story. Discuss it with the PO to be sure that all the corner cases are mentioned in the user story. As a developer, it is not your responsibility to think about the corner cases. If you can, good for you, but it is PO's responsibility. And the last thing about testing is that test is a red light KPI. We have two types of KPIs, red light KPI and green light KPI. A green light KPI tells you that you can proceed. You can, for example, push your code. You can deploy your code. But a red light KPI tells you when not to proceed. If a red light KPI is green, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that, okay, there is no issue here, but you shouldn't get the confident, get one unreal confident from unit tests if all of them are passed. But if just one of them failed, you cannot push to the source control or deploy your code on production. Let's start with the code. Okay, as you can see here, I have a solution. Here I have one project, calculator, and we have just one class, calculator. There is no implementation inside the class. And we have one README file. This README file is what my beloved product owner provided me with, and I can see all the description that he wants me to implement. In Visual Studio, the newest version of the Visual Studio, I guess Visual Studio version 17.5.3, yes, Microsoft added a new feature for showing you the preview of the MD files and markdown files. Nice. Okay, let me see what is happening here. This one should be like that. This one should be like that. Okay, perfect. And let's start with practicing TDD. The first thing that I need is create, or maybe it is better to say add new project. I really like to use XUnit project. I'm going to call it calculator.test. And now I'm going to add calculator project to this one. The reason that I'm using exactly the name of the class that I have, the library that I have, using that test here is by adding the dependency, adding the project as a dependency to the test project, there is no need to use using, because this namespace is a part of this namespace and they have access to each other. Nice, let's see. And here we have a unit test. In the unit test, I'm just trying to use assert dot equal 1 and 1. What does it mean? I'm going to explain it in a second. I'm going to test Explorer and run it. Let me open it. We are creating a test, assert 1 and 1 to be sure that our test framework is working. It is one of the best practices for many years ago, but it's based on habit that I'm creating things like that. What I'm trying to do is read the documentation. Okay, we need to have a calculator. It is going to do sum, subtract, multiply, and divide. Really simple. The sum method should accept two integer and return a result. I'm going to start writing a test. For X unit, you need to decorate your test method using the fact attribute. And after that, you need to create the method public void. And for the naming, you should follow this step. Okay, it's not a should. For me, it's a should, but not for you. But you need to have a standard for doing that. The suggestion that Microsoft gave us in the documentation is that having three parts in the name of the method. The first part explain about the existing situation, the second part what you are going to do, and the third part the expected value. Let me see. Given the calculator, when adding two numbers should return result. Is it a good naming? I think so, but we need to make it more clear. For example, here I am just saying when adding two numbers should return the result. I'm going to change it. For example, when adding 5 and 3 should return 8. Okay. Have it in mind. I'm just explaining the basic things because it is the first video about the testing. In the next videos, I'm not going to explain these stupid things. First of all, in testing, we have AAA. And AAA stands for arrange, act, assert. Assert. In the arrange part, you need to instantiate the class that you want to test. You need to do the things that you want to do before calling the method. For example, here I am going to create an instance var instance equal new calculator. Fine. In the act, I'm going to call the sum method. And in the assert, I'm going to check if the expected result is equal to the result that I'm getting. Let me show you. The first parameter is expected, and the second one is actual. The expected result is 8 here, and the actual result is value. Let me change the name here to actual result. Okay, here we don't have a running test. We need to make it running. I just click on control period and generate the sum method inside my class. Use control F12 to navigate to the class. Okay. Number 1 and number 2. And the return should be integer. Great. And we cannot run it. Let's just return -1 just to be sure that it is returning something and there is no compile error, and after that run the test. The first part for making a red unit test is completed. Now it is time to just make it green, and it is really easy. Number 1 plus number 2. And let's run the test. Yeah, great. Okay, about the naming of the unit test. What I really like is just by seeing the name of the unit test, see which of my tests are failing. Okay, we have some misspelling here. Okay, during this course, you will see a lot of misspelling from me because dictation is not my strongest suit. Let me fix it. Even calculator, yeah, it's a bit better. Now it is time to read the second one. It is for subtract. Okay, we are going to create a method. For sake of time, I'm just going to copy and paste it. Given the calculator, when subtracting 5 and 3, the result should be 2. In the real world, we are not doing a copy and paste for writing the test because it is highly possible that you miss something, and when you miss something, you are doomed. For example, here, if I miss that, the actual value should be 2, I'm doomed. Okay, and let's create it. Go here, run it. Okay, it is red, and it is time just to make it green. Return number 1. Oops, it is not number 1, it is v1 minus v2. And let's run the test. Fine, it is passing. Do I have something to refactor here? Yes, I have v1. It should be number 1. And about v2, it should be number 2. It is better. Let me go back to my test and see if there is anything here that I can change or refactor. Okay, I guess there is nothing here. Let me go back to the readme file, multiply. Okay, let's make a green unit test. Okay, given the calculator, when multiplying 5 and 3, the result should be 15. Okay, 5 and 3 multiply, and the result should be 15. And let me create it and come here and see. Okay, fine. I have a running application. Let's see if all the tests are green or not. Of course not. It is red. And now I should return v1 multiply v2. Great. And let's run it. Fine, it is passed. Now it is time to refactoring. For refactoring, first of all, I'm going to change the name number 1 and then number 2. Is there anything here to refactor? I don't think so. After each refactor, you need to run the test to be sure that your tests are still green. Okay, let's see here. Let me zoom back a bit to see. I'm using instance, and I am instantiating instance in all the methods. Maybe it is better, let me do it like that, to create a constructor, and after that, create this instance and generate a field for instance. Okay, because it is private, I'm going to rename it to underscore instance. And we don't need a range anymore. It should be instance. I don't need this implementation. It should be underscore instance. I don't need this one as well. It should be, oops, underscore instance. I'm going to run my unit test just to be sure that everything is fine and running. Nice, everything is running. Do I have any other things to refactor here? No. Okay, one question. In the previous step, I had just add and subtract. and I had the instantiation in both methods. Was it a good time to refactor it and just extract it into the constructor? I believe not, because when you have a repetitive thing once, it is an accident. Twice, it is a coincidence. But after that, for the third time, it is a pattern. And when you see a pattern, it is time to extract it and use it as a method somewhere in the constructor or I don't know where. Okay, great. And let's see what will happen for divide. For divide, accept to integer and return the result. Okay, I'm going to accept to integer, and after that I'm going to return the result. I'm using Control C and Control V for the sake of time. When divide, let's change it. For example, when divide 20 by 4, it should return 5, and it is 20, and it is 4, and it should be 5, and it should be divide. I need to create this method. Let me generate it and go there and then run it. I should have a failing test, please. Yeah, I have a failing test. Now I need to implement it. It is going to return v1 divided by v2, and it is going to return it. For now, I'm going to make it integer. Oops, they're returning objects. I need to change them. But first, let me run it, because I cannot refactor anything when I have a red unit test. Nice, it is working. I'm changing it to number 1 and this one to number 2. I'm going to change it to integer and the other object to integer. I missed them, sorry for that, but it happens. They are all green. Let me see what else do I have here. The result can be a floating number. Okay, let's come here and create another unit test. Given the calculator, dividing 20 by 3. Okay, let's open a calculator. 20 by 8, 2.5. It was better, I guess. 20 by 8, it should be 2.5. Okay, and let's change it to 8, and let's change this one to 2.5. And let's run the test. Okay, it is failing. Why it is failing? Because it is saying that it is expected 2.5, but the actual is 2. Let's see what is happening here. The reason is that this one is integer, the other one is integer, and when we are using the divide operator for integer and integer, it is going to return an 8. What can I do? First of all, I need to change it to a floating number, and then I'm going to cast just one of them to float. Now, if I look at this operator, it says that, okay, I'm assuming the right and left operands are both floats, and the result would be a floating point. Let me run the test. Working. Great. Let's go back to the README file, and if the second number is 0, divide by 0 exception. Okay, great. When the second number is 0, should return a divide by 0 exception. First of all, I'm going to check the second number is 0, the first number doesn't matter. But how to assert it? I guess this one is not useful anymore. Let me see, what do we have here? Assert, then let's try throws. Okay, throws, I want to see if the method is throwing an exception. This one is what I want. But what is this one? The type of the exception. If it is divide by 0 exception. Okay, and after that, this method accept an action. Okay, an action. Great, an action is something like that. Great, and I'm going to use this one here. Okay, I'm passing it an action. Okay, and let's see what will happen. Let me run it. It is giving me an error because it is throwing something, but not what we want. Let me go to the calculator, and here I am going to check if the second number is equal 0, you should throw what? Divide by 0 exception. And now let's check it again. Oops. I forgot the new keyword. And now it is working. It was really simple, I know, but it is the fundamental of TDD and red-green refactor. We will try with some other applications. Some other applications are a bit more difficult later in some other videos, but I guess you can understand what is the definition of the TDD and how to follow red-green refactor principles with the example that I gave you here. Okay, great. Please do not forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell. And when you do that, if I upload new videos, you will be informed. And thank you for watching this video. If you have any kind of question, please just write them below in the comments. See you soon.